Have you ever seen a human timer? Imagine someone strapped to a metal pole, then covered with a hollow glass cylinder. This cylinder has time marks etched on it: 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and so on. As time ticks by, water flows out of the pole at the same rate as a clock's ticking. Every 5 minutes, the water reaches a new time mark, and after 30 minutes, it completely submerges the person. That's the so-called human timer. But it's not just a simple timing device. It's used in a deadly game called Endless Sea of Suffering. In this game, players form teams of 3 in a triangular-shaped room. One person becomes the human timer, while the other 2 answer questions from the organizer. If they get the answer right, the water stops flowing. If they get it wrong, the water keeps rising. According to scientific studies, drowning is known to be one of the most agonizing ways to die. But the stakes are incredibly high. Win all the challenges, and you could walk away with 100 billion yen, and a shot at inheriting a major Japanese conglomerate. So, what's the trick to beating this game? The organizer's questions are mind-boggling. Every room is the same. So what are you? Put your thinking cap on and see if you can figure out the answer. Drop your guesses in the comments. Among the players, the only real math whiz is Zero, the math teacher. At the start of the game, the players roll dice, and the one with the lowest number becomes the human timer. Unfortunately for Zero, he rolls a 1, so he ends up strapped to the metal pole. This is the cruelest death game ever. If you fail, you'll drown in water. The game's organizer, Secretary Mikiko, tells everyone that all the rooms are identical triangles. During the game, each team only gets 1 chance to answer a question. If one team gets it right, the water for all other teams stops. Each winning team member earns a ring, and collecting 4 rings makes you the heir to billions. The game starts with a 30-minute timer, and the glass tank begins to fill with water. Zero's 2 teammates bring in a pad and some paper from the next room. The pad displays 25 potential answers, and they're all completely bewildered. Each option seems plausible, but none stand out. Zero is in a tight spot, with the water quickly reaching the 5-minute mark. The distracting information on the pad makes it hard to decide. Zero tries to stay calm, deciding to ignore the options and look for clues around the room. He suddenly remembers Secretary Mikiko mentioned that all rooms are the same triangular shape. So, he tells his teammates, Muscle Sakura and Gray Seiji, to search the room for any hints. Muscle Sakura is baffled, saying the room is so tiny that finding anything seems like a long shot. He even suggests smashing the tank with the dice stand to rescue Zero. Just then, Sakura notices a special symbol AO under the dice stand. Gray Seiji writes it down on the paper for Zero to see. Zero analyzes it from a mathematical perspective, and thinks AO might represent an electrical circuit diagram symbol. Since it's related to electricity, Gray Seiji looks at the options, and sees option 12, thunder, which ties into electricity. But Zero figures out that such a complex idea is unlikely to be the answer, since most players wouldn't think of it. So, thunder probably isn't the right answer. In this IQ-testing death game, Muscle Sakura is surprisingly allergic to numbers. He breaks out in hives at the mere mention of math symbols. Scratching away, Muscle Sakura says, "This has to be some kind of symbol." Zero suddenly has a breakthrough. He decides to shift gears and asks Muscle Sakura to check every corner of the room for any other AO markings. Muscle Sakura scours the room, but turns up empty-handed. Zero is convinced that AO is a crucial clue. He then asks Muscle Sakura to sketch out the triangular layout of the room on the paper, and add an arc at the left corner. This is a common shape used in angle calculations. Thus, A represents the arc, since it resembles an angle with an arc, and O stands for the degree unit degrees. Zero figures that they need to calculate the angle of each corner of the room to find the correct answer. But here's the catch: the trio has no protractor or triangle ruler to measure the angles. Zero notices baseboards along the bottom of the walls, and tells Seiji and Sakura to count them. They find 21 baseboards on each side of the door, indicating that the room is an isosceles triangle. Next, Zero has Muscle Sakura count the baseboards in the small adjacent room, and finds the same count, 21 baseboards along the door and 13 on the short side, confirming that the small room is also an isosceles triangle. To simplify things, let's call the small room Room 1 and the player's room Room 2. Combining rooms 1 and 2 forms a large isosceles triangle, which we'll call Room 3. Room 3 has 2 long sides, each totaling 21 plus 13 is equal to 34, and a third short side of 21. Gray Seiji quickly calculates that the angle represented by AO is 36 degrees. The water inside the glass cylinder has reached Zero's arms and is creeping up to his nose. Despite this, Zero still hasn't cracked the angle puzzle. Many players are overwhelmed by the rising water, panic, and end up guessing randomly. Naturally, all their answers are wrong, and the water keeps pouring in. Desperation fills the room, and everyone is hoping for a savior to emerge. At this moment, a large goose flies overhead, and Zero suddenly has a flash of inspiration. Why is only the ceiling transparent? He thinks further and realizes that since every room is the same size, the distance from each room's entrance to the 36-degree angle is identical. If you arrange each room 3, the large isosceles triangle around the center of the 36-degree angle, from above, the entire setup forms a decagon, or a 10-sided shape. 10 times 36 degrees perfectly makes up 360 degrees. Recalling the question, all the rooms are the same. What are you? Zero understands that you refers to the entire game area. When you remove all the small rooms and keep just the player's room in the center, it forms a star shape. And guess what? The answer options include star. At this point, Mitsuru reaches the same conclusion. If he answers first, he'll collect all 4 rings and become a billionaire. This death game is terrifying. The water has risen to neck level, and both Mitsuru and Zero suddenly realize the problem. They urgently try to stop their teammate from choosing an answer, but Mitsuru's teammate is too quick and has already picked the star option. The organizer deems this choice incorrect. What's going on? At this point, all other teams have failed, leaving only Zero's team in the game. Everyone is pinning their hopes on Zero. Thankfully, Zero hits the brakes just in time and requests to review the answers again. Eventually, they discover the crucial detail. Zero and Mitsuru both realized that they had been aligning the 2 large isosceles triangles as opposite, meaning the long sides of the triangles overlapped, which doesn't match Secretary Mikiko's statement that each room is the same. So, they need to make sure each large triangle's long side faces to the right. Only then can they ensure that all the rooms are truly identical. When they rearrange the rooms this way, they finally form a pinwheel shape. When playing a death game, never be too kind. With 26 minutes gone by, Muscle Sakura finds the pinwheel option and hits the confirm button. Zero has completed the task, but his body is fully submerged in the water. Secretary Mikiko confirms the answer as correct, and the water flow starts to stop. But it's too late. Zero has stopped breathing, and his heart has ceased beating. Zero sacrificed himself to save all the other players. As Zero's rival, Gray Seiji now has to perform CPR on him. Despite being a notorious con artist, while Zero is known for recovering stolen money as a righteous thief, Gray Seiji understands that without Zero, he too would not have one. Seeing Zero still unresponsive, Seiji urgently begins artificial respiration. After several rounds of intense rescue efforts, Zero finally coughs up a mouthful of water and begins to breathe again. In the end, Zero, Gray Seiji, and Muscle Sakura each earn a ring for their survival. Currently, Zero has only 1 ring, but with the difficulty of the upcoming challenges set to escalate, the real test is yet to come. How will Zero tackle the next round of brutal games? Stay tuned for the next episode. This is episodes 4 to 5 of Zero, the bravest money game. Thanks for tuning in and subscribing. See you next time. Bye.